Everyone to Overview and Scrutiny. I don't think we've ever been as popular, certainly not in my time as chair. First of all, do we have any apologies for absence and substitutions? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman, and obviously the high attendance is all down to your wonderful chairmanship. The apologies from Councillor Mike Adams. He's been substituted by Councillor Martin Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis? Microphone.
Apologies. Just 1 second. Okay. Thank you. We have a number of apologies. I've already sent them through to the Democratic Services. Thank you. And we have substitutions.
Thank you. So we've got apologies from Councillors Pauline and Roy Allen, Councillor Jim Creaner, Councillor Ron McCrossan, and I'll come to the next one. And in attendance instead, I can see Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Nyack, Councillor Strong, Alison, sorry Alison, your surname's gone from my head. Is that Councillor Hunt? Is anyone else? No. And then I've got apologies from Councillor Whiting. So Councillor Mead, are you here substituting? Yeah. Thank you. For those who are on the committee, if you can recall the minutes from the meeting on the 12th of January, are there any corrections to those? So we can approve them as a correct record. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? And any abstentions? Thank you. Any matters arising from those minutes, or are we going to come to them later? Okay, we'll come back to those if anyone's got any. Any declarations of interest for any of the items on the agenda today? Obviously, in the usual way, if you realise that you do have interest to declare, please let us know if it comes up. So, because we're now moving to item 4, how I'm proposing to manage this item is that Natalie will introduce the item. Lance will then give a response on behalf of the Leisure Department. I've been notified that some members of the public want to ask questions. Is there anyone else from the public who wants to ask questions who hasn't notified us? No? Okay, it's just so that I can manage the time. And then I'll open it up to the committee councillors to ask questions. Okay? So, Natalie.
Good evening. So on the 19th of February, Cabinet made the following decision. So that was in 3 parts that hadn't been enacted. So that was the Cabinet notes and agrees the outputs of REBA Stage 2 design work for the Carlton Active Leisure, Health and Wellbeing Centre, including emerging designs proposals, business case position and indicative REBA Stage 2 costs plan. 2 was subject to budget approval. Cabinet approves the progression of the project into pre-construction. So that's known as REBA Stage 3 and REBA Stage 4. And 3, Cabinet agrees to the closure of the Richard Herod Centre with effect from the 1st of May 2026. So on the 23rd of February, a request for call-in for that decision was made by councillors in accordance with the requirements set out in the Constitution. So call-in request was made by councillors Adams, Sam Smith and Martin Smith. So the grounds for and merits for scrutiny were for lack of transparency, public support, risk to public health and well-being, and a failure to properly explore reasonable alternatives. So the matter has now been referred to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we're here to discuss. So we're here to look at the submissions put forward by the three councillors for calling. The particular submissions to be looked at are, so the decision that was, so the circumstances that we are to look at are in relation to the consultation decision and what evidence was put in place and what evidence was considered by Cabinet of that consultation decision. So you'll note that Overview and Scrutiny have not considered this decision of Cabinet from February the 19th prior to the report being presented to the Executive. So the facility mix of Carlton Active was initially agreed by Cabinet in September 2025. This was following a consultation with residents, stakeholders and engagement sessions with all members of the Council. So that decision made by Cabinet in September 2025, which excluded indoor bowls from the provision of the proposed facility mix, was not subject to call-in. So in December 2025, the Council considered a petition presented by the Gedling Bowls Club, and that petition called for the reinstatement of the indoor bowls. The petition was debated by Council, and the matter was referred back to Cabinet for consideration as part of their decision on REBA Stage 2. So that was the Cabinet decision from February the 19th of this year. So it is proposed that the committee today consider the request for call-in, the decision taken by Cabinet, which is at Appendix 1, and the officer response at Appendix 2, as well as any information provided to the committee today, and whether that decision of Cabinet, which was made on the 19th of February 2026, requires any further consideration. So the committee can determine that no further action be taken and reject the call-in, can refer the decision with recommendations to Cabinet, or can determine not to exercise call-in function and refer the function back to Council. So they are the three options open to the committee today.
Thank you very much. Lance, can you give the response? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to provide this formal officer response to the call-in relating to the Cabinet decision on the 19th of February 2026. And as Natalie said, this concerns the Carlton Active REBA 2 business case that was presented on that day. So my intention today is to clarify the evidence, reaffirm the integrity of the process undertaken, and demonstrate why the recommendation to progress to REBA stages 3 and 4 remain sound, lawful and in the best interests of Gedling Borough Council and the communities we serve. The Appendix 2 of the report, which is put before members, sets out a comprehensive response solely based on the evidence that was already available to Cabinet when the decision was made. So there's no new material that's been introduced. Officers have relied on a structured suite of published documents, including the February 2026 Cabinet report, the Alliance Leisure REBA Stage 2 report, the quality impact assessments from both 2025 and 2026, the public stakeholder engagement report. This documented findings from our 2025 engagement, the Carlton Active business plan and the adopted leisure strategy. The Appendix 2 before scrutiny establishes that the process was transparent, evidence-based and consistent with the Council's constitutional and financial frameworks. It's important to restate what the Cabinet decision in February did. The 19th of February decision approved progression from REBA Stage 2 into Stages 3 and 4. This enables greater design detail, cost refinement and technical development. Crucially, it did not commit the Council to final construction contract nor to irreversible financial obligations. It was a gateway decision, not a final approval for build. Engagement with effective stakeholders, particularly around indoor bowls provision, continues throughout the next stages. Members should be assured that the development of Carn Active has been governed through a structured, transparent and sequential process fully aligned with the REBA plan of work and the Council's capital project governance arrangements. The Council appointed Lions Leisure Services Limited through the UK Leisure Framework, providing a compliant procurement route and access to expert sector knowledge. Max Associates were commissioned through the UK Leisure Framework to refresh the strategic outcomes planning model and develop the updated leisure strategy, testing the viability of consolidating two ageing, inefficient centres into a single modern hub. At each stage of REBA 0, 1 and 2, options were assessed, tested for affordability, modelled for operational sustainability and informed by engagement evidence. The exclusion of indoor bowls at stage 1 was an executive level decision taken after weighing affordability, demand and site limitations. The petition received in September 2025 in relation to indoor bowls, containing over 1,000 signatures, was debated at full council and formally referred back to the executive for consideration. The governance pathway followed has therefore been structured, democratic and fully compliant. I will now in turn respond to each of the calling grounds. Ground 1, lack of transparency. The call-in states consultation responses and community submissions do not appear to have been fully or accurately reflected in the reports or the final decision-making process. Appendix 2 responds to this and provides evidence of how consultation responses and submissions are reflected in the reports that have informed decision-making. For example, engagement with Bowls stakeholders took place at every stage, including dedicated Bowls focus group sessions at which over 200 people attended, structured stakeholder engagement during the development of the leisure strategy, direct meetings with Gedling Indoor Bowls Club directors and governing bodies including the English Indoor Bowling Association, formal submissions from the Bowls Club including a 6-rink business case, inclusion of bowls issues in both equality impact assessments, consideration of the petition at full council. For example, the leisure strategy presented to Cabinet in September documented the feedback from the dedicated bowls focus groups and the concerns raised by this section of the community. The strategy also gave an overview of a business plan provided to the council by Gedling Indoor Bowls Club. This plan provided the club's strategic, financial and social rationale for retaining indoor bowls. The strategy recognised the Bowls Club's business plan demonstrates strong social, strategic and financial arguments for retaining the indoor bowls facility. But the strategy notes that these proposals must be weighed against wider facility needs, site constraints and capital affordability. The leisure strategy also included the viewpoint of English Indoor Bowls Association, and this asserted in the view of the governing body a need to retain Richard Herod Indoor Bowls facility and its importance as Gedling's only indoor facility. The strategy informed the England Indoor Bowls Association considered facility size must align with any business plan and year-round demand, the need to comply with competition requirements, official laws of the sport and the lack of planned or capital investment available for indoor bowls in Nottinghamshire. Furthermore, it should be noted the public and stakeholder engagement report documents referred to in Appendix 2 present extensive engagement activity across the community, including 16 stakeholder sessions, 4 public sessions and 11 formal letters. The engagement has been comprehensive and importantly considered the wider community view of existing and future provision in the borough. Following the consideration of the petition at council in November, this was further considered by the executive in February. The REBA Stage 2 assessment did not disregard this petition. It included reference to 3-rink, 4-rink and 6-rink bowls hall scenarios. The REBA 2 report utilised that evidence to test alternative bowls configurations within the constraints of capital affordability and operational sustainability. Bowls stakeholders were not only heard, their submissions were analysed and explicitly reconsidered during the process. Grant 2, public support. The call incites that statements made regarding the level of community backing for changes to the facility do not align with the evidence presented by the Bowls Club and wider user groups. Evidence assessed from the project identifies public support for a new modern facility and that Cabinet did not overstate public backing for the preferred scheme. The borough-wide engagement survey received 1,490 responses, offering a robust data set. The cohort of responses indicated a strong mix of both younger families and older adults. Over a third of respondents, 36%, were retired, while nearly 1 in 5, 19%, reported living with a long-term health condition or disability, underlining the importance of inclusive and accessible provision. The survey found that the most frequently used council leisure facilities are the main pool at 28% and gym at 19%. When asked for investment priorities, respondents highlighted gym facilities, mind and body activities, physiotherapy and health improvement services. Bowls was selected by 9% of leisure users and referenced in approximately 4% of all responses. Among older adults, priorities focused on provision that supports active ageing. The most selected options were social and group activities at 21%, water-based classes 18%, and treatment rooms 14%, with a further 11% expressing interest in power-assisted equipment. For community and social space, respondents valued the inclusion of welcoming, flexible areas. A cafe at 33% was the most popular choice, followed by provision for social events 19%, meeting rooms 12%, and flexible workspace at 9%. These results underline the importance of Carlton Active not only as a sporting venue, but also as a community hub. The wider stakeholder and community engagement undertaken in 2025 also included engagement with young people, older adults, equalities groups, local sports clubs, Gedling Indoor Bowls Club, leisure workforce and strategic partners such as Sport England, Swim England, the English Indoor Bowls Association, Active Knots and local and national health bodies. Young people, including the Youth Council and local schools, highlighted the importance of affordability, safe social spaces and more youth-focused programming. Older adults, represented through the Senior Council and community groups, prioritise warm water swimming, water-based exercise classes and assisted exercise provision, alongside accessible design features and spaces for social interaction. Health partners, including NHS and public health representatives, viewed Carlton Active as a potential hub for prevention, rehabilitation and social prescribing. This evidence shows that whilst Bowls is important to its core user base, borough-wide demand is far more heavily weighted towards swimming, gym-based activity and preventative health services. Cabinet therefore had to balance strong but targeted support for Bowls with broader participation data and affordability constraints. Grand 3, risk to public health and wellbeing impact. The call-in suggests the loss of downgrading of indoor bowls facility presents significant risks, including increased social isolation, reduced mobility and potential deterioration in physical and mental health for many residents. The reports to Cabinet fully acknowledge that Bowls serves an important role for social connection, low-impact activity and community well-being. This has been clearly expressed through the comprehensive engagement that has been undertaken. Therefore, this role that Indoor Bowls provides has been considered thoroughly within the formal equality impact assessments that were carried out during the REBA process and as part of Cabinet reporting. The equality impact assessments have identified a potential disproportionate impact on older and disabled residents who currently use indoor bowls. Cabinet was therefore fully aware of this issue. Mitigations have been clearly identified, including continued structured engagement with Bowls stakeholders and members of the wider older population and residents with a disability or health need. Non-financial support to explore alternative venue options for indoor bowls. Inclusive programming within the new Carlton Active facility. promotion of existing health and wellbeing programmes at Carlton Forum, and the further development of leisure activities to serve those with specific health needs, provision of an assisted exercise suite within Carlton Active, multiple studios for age-friendly and low-impact activity within Carlton Active, a main and learner pool suitable for aqua-based exercise within Carlton Active, community rooms and social spaces to address social isolation, inclusive design principles such as improved accessibility and dementia-friendly environments. Cabinet was required to weigh the impact on a defined user group of the bowls community against the broader preventative health benefits of the overall scheme. The decision to progress reflected that balanced judgment while considering the need for mitigation measures to be embedded within the ongoing provision of leisure services. Ground 4, failure to properly explore reasonable alternatives. The call-in references there is no comparable indoor bowling provision within Gedling Borough, leaving a substantial gap in local recreational and wellbeing services, failing to recognise Sport England, United in Movement, and resulting in displacement. Indoor bowls was explored at REBA Stage 0, reassessed at REBA Stage 2, and modelled extensively in the business plan. Officers tested scenarios with and without bowls, incorporating 5-year income and expenditure forecasts, usage modelling, sensitivity testing, and capital cost estimation. Indicative capital costs for a 6-rink bowls facility range from £5.6 million to £7 million. Revenue modelling demonstrated that while socially valuable, bowls would not generate sufficient income to offset either the capital or operational costs. Engagement with the Bowls Club and English Indoor Bowls Association last year asserted that anything below 6 rinks would jeopardise competition requirements, membership and long-term sustainability. Site constraints were another major limiting factor. The REBA Stage 2 report noted that the land footprint would not allow for a bowls hall without significant compromise to core facilities such as the pool or gym, components that carry substantially higher community demand. Following the petition and further engagement from Gedling Indoor Bowls Club, REBA 2 considered 4, 5 as well as 6 rinks as part of this analysis. Refurbishing or extending the existing building was also explored, but found to risk higher costs, poorer energy efficient performance and constraints inconsistent with modern passive house informed design principles. Alternative sites for bowls have been explored as part of ongoing dialogue with the club in response to Cabinet's decision in September 2025 to provide non-financial support to Gedling Indoor Bowls Club. This has included a comprehensive 35-page report of potential 11 alternative venues in the borough for potential refurbishment, 5 sites that could be purchased subject to capital funding being available, and a brief review of other indoor bowls facilities in the local area, such as Nottingham Indoor Bowls Club and Erewash Indoor Bowls Club. This report, produced by the Council and shared with Bowls Club directors, draws upon financial and high-level revenue modelling, an assessment of available alternative sites, and utilises income projections from the Bowls Club's previously submitted business case work. The Council remains open to discussing how the Bowls Club can be supported in this regard. The Council has also asked Nottinghamshire County Council to explore any options for an indoor bowls facility locally, and that is something officers at the county are looking into. The leisure strategy presented to Cabinet in September 2025 makes specific reference to Sport England's Uniting the Movement Strategy 2011 to 2031. Alongside the breadth of other national strategies Sport England has published, including the future of public leisure services in 2022. Drawing upon the outcomes within both strategic national frameworks, such as these, and local strategies, is a key component of the strategic outcome plannings models strategic review we have undertaken. This is a model advocated by Sport England itself in developing a strategic plan for local leisure facilities. In the last month, officers have shared our strategy with Sport England at a national level, and this has informed exploratory discussions with Sport England on options for alternative funding models to support Carlton Active. The strategy has also undertaken comprehensive analysis of population health and community data alongside the extensive stakeholder and community insight I have previously referenced. In summarising the evidence, the report in response to calling concludes Cabinet had before it a comprehensive package of technical, financial, equality and engagement evidence. The disproportionate impact on bowls users was identified early, revisited in detail, and mitigation measures were proposed. The business case for retaining bowls was thoroughly tested and found to be unaffordable within the Council's financial framework. Cabinet was legally required to balance equalities duties with borough-wide strategic needs, financial sustainability and physical site constraints. The decision followed a transparent, staged democratic process, including full council debate of the petition and formal gateway approvals. Members, the officer position is that the Cabinet decision on the 19th of February 2026 was taken in good faith on the basis of comprehensive and transparent evidence, following proper governance and with a clear understanding of both the benefits and impacts of the proposed scheme. Progression to REBA stages 3 and 4 does not commit the Council to construction, but it does ensure that members will have access to the refined technical and financial detail needed to make that future decision responsibly.
Thank you very much, Lance, for that. So I'm now going to ask the two members of the public who identified that they wanted to ask questions. Which one of you is going for? So Jenny Higgins, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Equality Impact Assessment relied upon by Cabinet for the Carlton Active decision appears not to properly assess the impact on protected groups as required under the Equality Act 2010. The EQIA does not assess the impacts of the anticipated 3-year gap between the closure of the existing bowls facility and the opening of Carlton Active. For many users, particularly older and disabled residents, that gap removes access to the activity entirely, yet no mitigation is identified. My question is, how can Cabinet be said to have had due regard under the Equality Act when this significant time gap harm has neither been assessed nor mitigated? The EQIA also fails to assess the displacement of indoor bowls users from the Richard Herod Centre, does not examine or consult on reasonable alternatives, and identifies no mitigation for the loss of this established facility, or indeed references the activity levels of the Richard Herod Centre. Both the public sector equality duty and Sports England Uniting the Movement require decision makers to consider reasonable alternatives and mitigation where harm is identified. My question is, how can Cabinet be said to have discharged its equality duty when the EQIA contains no assessment of displacement, no consideration of alternatives, and no mitigation of the resulting harm? Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thanks. Thanks, Jenny, for the question. So, as I made reference to in my summary of Appendix 2, I referred to the equality and impact assessments that have been undertaken as part of this work, and there was certainly some detail that was put into Cabinet around the impact on the bowls community, as I've stated, particularly around health and well-being and participation. And obviously that was fully considered in the decision. What I also made reference to is some of the mitigations that were considered, and some of those mitigations consider, I guess, how do we offer the right activities for the community to support, I guess, the cohort of bowlers. So it may not always be bowls as an activity, but as I talked about, there's opportunities around looking at our leisure provision and how do we provide facilities for the older population, with residents with health needs and with a disability as well. And I think that's really quite important, and I think some of that isn't just around waiting 3 years. So I did make reference to what the Carlton Active facility can offer, so things like assisted exercise and you know, designed in a way that can support people with dementia, etc. But some of this is very much around what can we provide in the interim in terms of our existing leisure provision. What the Equality Impact Assessment did state is the need for ongoing engagement with members of the Bowls community and also with people with health needs to make sure that the provision we have now over the next 3 years looks to meet those needs. Now, there's a whole range of programme and provision that we currently have at Calm Forum that certainly is tailored to meet the needs of older people with specific health conditions as well. We have a whole range of programmes that working with NHS colleagues that we're developing and we want to put in place. But as I said, in order to get that right, we are committed, and the Quality Impact Assessment did say there is a need for ongoing engagement to make sure any provision that we make is appropriate to the needs of the population. In terms of identifying alternative venues, I guess, Jenny, you mentioned around the displacement of Bowls users and looking at reasonable alternatives. Again, there's reference in the Equality Impact Assessment around an assessment of looking at alternative venues. I would say that is work in progress. I made reference to a report that the council has done to look at alternative bowls venues in the borough. So that looks at a range of premises that could be used for refurbishment or potentially could be purchased for that. Obviously, there's a financial assessment of that. So I guess that is a work in progress, and that has been shared obviously with Bowls Club directors. And as I said in my summary, the council's commitment is to have ongoing discussions with regard to that and to support sort of further development of that. So the Equality Impact Assessment did look at those other alternatives. Again, in terms of the alternatives, if Bowls isn't included in the proposals moving forward, I refer back to, so what are the activities and programmes we can deliver now for the community? So we have a whole range of activity programmes we currently do, and I might bring Connor in if that's okay, just to talk about what we offer at Calm Forum, particularly for older people and people with health needs. Connor's our operations manager at Calm Forum, so obviously a lot of what we're providing now is around an active wellbeing service, so it's very much around moving away from traditional leisure, but trying to support the needs of the population. Is that all right, Connor, if you just give some of the examples of, yeah, if you come on.
Yeah, happy to discuss some of the senior offer that we have at Calm Forum. We have, as Lance said, an extensive range of different facilities and different activities as part of our programme. To be honest with you, our entire programme is reasonably inclusive, so we encourage everyone to take part in physical activity. We have a nice big gym, big pool, and a very wide range of different classes. That some of those are quite high intensity, some of them are low intensity, some of them focus on mind and body. So there's quite a wide range, to be honest with you, of different facilities that we have. We have groups such as senior only groups and 50 plus groups that work and sort of come to the centre every day. They socialise as well, because we recognise that is a huge part of people's sort of mental well-being. We have a fantastic different range of pool facilities, which is really good for senior and sort of rehabilitation sort of circumstances. And what we also have now, and what we're continuing to build on, is our sort of our health programme. So we have an extensive sort of scheme of different classes, different pathways that you can go through, everything from cardiac referral pathways to pulmonary pathways, supporting people that have had cancer, supporting people that are frail and that have potential various different health concerns. So we work with, as Lance says, NHS partners to deliver on that. We have resident physiotherapy that takes place at Calm Forum, and we work in sort of cooperation with local partners to provide that. So we see hundreds of people at the centre every week engaging in sort of active and meaningful sort of activity that supports their health and well-being and their rehabilitation. I think that's probably it. Yeah.
Thanks, Connor. So as I said, what we currently do at the moment, it's making sure we're promoting and ensuring that the community is aware of that offer on the one hand. But as I've said, in the Equality Impact Assessment reflecting this, is about how we do ongoing engagement, particularly from those affected by this decision, those affected by the loss of bowls as well, to ensure that what we provide can meet their needs. So it's understanding those ongoing needs, because obviously we've heard from the consultation, the feedback around challenges and concerns around social isolation, physical activity as well. So again, some of the programs that Conor referred to, well, the outcome of those is very much about addressing those needs in the community. So again, our commitment is to have that ongoing dialogue.
Thank you, and thank you again, Jenny, for the question. Ian Summerskill, would you like to ask your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, members of your executive have repeatedly stated that the decision is based around financial drivers, including the risk of failure to the swimming pool infrastructure at Carlton Forum. Lance, in a meeting on the 17th February, estimated the cost of the necessary remedial works at being around £2 million. If the decision relating to Carlton Active stands, it commits the council to spending a further £1.6 million on top of £500,000 already spent on consultants, just to get to a point where the total cost of the project, currently estimated at £29.9 million, will be confirmed, for which there is no funding currently in place and already exceeds the council's own affordability criteria by between £1.5 and £2 million. My question in two parts is this. If the current decision is allowed to stand, it may leave the council open to legal challenge. It could be argued that the decision is based on flawed consultation and decision making and would commit a future authority post LGR to repaying a multi-billion pound loan. So, does this committee agree that it's really the best use of public money? Furthermore, does it agree that the available funds, rather than being spent on consultants, would be better spent mitigating the current risks to the swimming facilities, which, I think I'm right in quoting you, Lance, you said, could fail at any time, and potentially before the replacement facility is even made available? And secondly, Mike Hill, in that same meeting on the 17th February, conceded that the subsidy required to support Richard Harris Centre is in no way due or attributable to the provision of indoor bowls. So my question is, does this committee agree that an options appraisal for Carlton Active should be revisited, including the option to retain a 4-rink indoor bowls facility, which, for the record, is something that we have never been consulted on? And with your permission, Madam Chair, can I just respond to a couple of the points that have been made by Lance? Is that acceptable?
You can. I'm just advised that part of your questions you've asked are outside the parameters of the call-in. So please make your comments and then I'll get some clarification on that.
So I understand what you're saying. It relates to transparency from my point of view. So in terms of public support and demand, we don't argue that there's a large demand for swimming or gyms within the borough, but there are numerous other swimming facilities and gyms within the borough. There are no alternative bowls facilities within several miles and a long travelling distance. And also, on the alternatives, the work that was done, and it's a very good piece of work around alternatives, just to put it into perspective, the lowest cost of any of those alternatives is somewhere between £2 and £3 million. We don't have £2 to £3 million, so how they can be put forward as reasonable alternatives, I think, is questionable. And finally, just to be clear, we did write to the leader of the council with our concerns around displacement and alternative provisions nearly 2 months ago, I think now, and we still haven't had a response. And in terms of ongoing engagement, as we stand here today, there are no future meetings in our diary for meeting with anybody from the council. And to add insult to injury, we received a letter today asking us to make sure that we removed all our possessions from the centre by the 30th of April. Is that right, Jenny? And that's the very last day that the centre, at the current plan, is operational. We can't clear out everything on the last day we're there. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate your patience.
Lance, can I ask you to answer the questions that are within the remit of, so I think the funding is not in the remit of the call-in.
Okay, well, what I'll just make reference to the Carlton Forum issue, because I think that's part of that question really around kind of expenditure. And just a bit of context really, because I think it is helpful for this discussion. Ian, you mentioned around conversation and cost of remedial works at Carlton Forum, circa 2 million. That's very much an estimate of those costs. I think the context with Carlton Forum Leisure Centre, which is, I guess, the current asset maintenance issues there are a real catalyst in terms of what we're trying to do. So Carlton Forum is 56 years old. And I guess due to its age, there's significant asset issues that require extensive repairs and maintenance. So there are issues to do with air handling systems, roof, fixed electrical systems, heating, pool plant, etc. So these are things that will happen when there's an old building that needs to be continually managed. Still remain safe as a facility. We do lots of work to manage that to avoid the escalation of issues. I think I mentioned at the meeting you referenced in that the biggest issue we have at Carlton Forum is the drainage system. So although repairs and maintenance can be made for the other assets, the drainage issues can't be fully repaired. So that's the challenge we face. So in effect, the only way to resolve the drains issue is to completely demolish the building and rebuild again. And part of the sort of technical detail of that is, the drains infrastructure has failed. But it's built within a concrete block that cannot be excavated. So in order to solve that problem, as I said, the whole building needs to come down. So the building's owned by Nottinghamshire County Council. We've been working closely with officers at the County Council to reduce and resolve these issues. But it is certainly very much a mitigation issue which we're having to manage around that. So in terms of repairing completely, that's just not possible. So that's part of the challenge that we face at Carlton Forum. So yes, there could be expenditure around some of those assets over time, but ultimately the biggest issue is the drains are damaged beyond repair. So the real risk around the potential closure of that building is if we can no longer do our mitigation measures to keep it open. And obviously what that means is potential closure of the site. You know, we've got over 4,000 swim club members, so they're children and young people swimming, and obviously health and fitness members as well, including that figure. So obviously that's a loss of facility for a large part of the population. So that's the real risk we're facing. And so, as I've mentioned, that's a real catalyst in terms of moving forward with Carlton Active. So when we talk about an additional swimming pool, well, actually, this is a replacement swimming pool for what's currently at Carlton Forum, which is significantly used by the population, also for school swimming as well that the County Council provide. So the risk is losing that, and so this is where the Council has gone forward with this kind of capital programme in order to replace the facility that exists there.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you both for your questions. I'm now going to open this up to the committee. Can I remind the committee that, as per the introduction Natalie gave, the reasons for the call-in are stated in that original paper, and I will be keeping people to points that are within the remit of the call-in, and what we're being asked to do is scrutinise the decision that Cabinet made to those points. So this isn't now a committee where you can voice what you think is wrong or right about the decision that Cabinet made, or anything else to do with the leisure strategy that you may or may not like. It is to scrutinise based on what the call-in has asked for. Okay? Are you indicating you wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been taking extremely lengthy notes during the discussion, so thank you to officers and the Bowls Club for their contribution. If I may, I'm going to focus my comments on the point 4 of the call-in, which highlights the failure to properly explore reasonable alternatives, if that's appropriate and legal. I believe it is. Because that's the fundamental problem, in my opinion, and hence why I wrote it on the call-in. And I think, in my opinion only, that I think Cabinet have inadvertently, by accident, or unintendedly, sorry, made a decision that just misuses public money. And I know that's a big statement to make, and it might not be legally correct, but that is my opinion. And I think it's unintended as a result. I must stress that. But when we referred as a council the petition back to Cabinet, the whole point in that debate was the fact of point 4 in the call-in, which is non-reasonable alternatives. Cabinet had the perfect opportunity to say to your department, Lance, and I think they should have done, because that's what the petition was calling for, stop what you're doing, have a look at other contractors and other options, and let's consider that as a reasonable alternative proposal. That chance was fundamentally missed. I haven't watched the Cabinet meeting back because I don't suffer with insomnia, but I've read the paper and there's no alternatives come forward. And we are spending public money here. You know, if your car breaks down on the way home after this meeting and you need a new car, or your boiler leaks, you get more than one quote because it's your own money. But when it's public money of £30 million of public money, we've got one contractor. Not one contractor, there's 9 subcontractors involved, if you read the papers in front of us, that's costing us £1.5 million in fees. It's ridiculous. It is completely wrong that we have not gone out to other contractors and said, here's 30 million quid.
I'm struggling where this is about looking at reasonable alternatives for
Reasonable
bowling.
alternatives to the proposal in front, the proposal that Cabinet have made, because there's been none. There's been no reasonable alternatives be presented to Cabinet to say, here's 30 million quid and we'll deliver your leisure facilities and your bowls club. There hasn't. And I just think that, as I said, is an unintended misuse of public money, because we should be saying Cabinet should have seen reasonable alternatives explored and been able to vote on them and documented. It's not. Then we talk about we've had 4 lanes been put forward by the group and we've only seen plans for 6. Where's the reasonable alternatives in that's been debated by Cabinet? There hasn't been. There hasn't been. We're saying 6 lanes will cost 9 million quid, but we'll only get 1 quote for that. And there's no alternative. And I think that is such a disgraceful place to find the council in. And as a committee, we should vote to send this back to Cabinet for another look. Pause what the plans are now, have another look, get alternative options drawn up. 30 million quid we're about to spend of taxpayers' money, and we're not getting what we want. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You won't do it with your own money. You won't buy a house that didn't deliver everything. You wouldn't buy a car that only had 3 wheels on and you needed a 4th one, and you wouldn't get one quote. It is completely ridiculous, and it is public money that we're throwing out the door to potentially a new council that is going to be lumbered with the debt because Gedling won't exist. It'll be cheaper than 30 million quid to fix the drainage at Carlton Forum. What conversations have we had with the council about that? Nothing. Nothing.
So in your call-in, you talked about reasonable alternatives for indoor bowling provision, which I think Lance has answered. You're now talking beyond the remit of the call-in about different alternatives to the whole leisure strategy.
To the strategy.
But that isn't what the call-in is.
I'll get back to the point about reasonable alternatives then of the other options that have been put forward. I think, Lance, I can't remember how many you said, but the Speaker said it's going to cost 2 to 3 million quid. Well, has the Council offered any support financially for that to ensure they have reasonable alternatives? And what is going to be in place come the end of March when they're having to move out? and why didn't that decision get made on the reasonable alternatives with the Cabinet report? I think that is a failure in process, and that's why this call-in needs to go to full council for the council to look at it again and say, we'll pause this, there's no alternative provision that exists. We need to look at how much money we're going to give them. We need to get a different contractor in so we can compare the quotes of the leisure strategy, and we need to think again. So I formally move that this committee sends this decision back to full council to have a proper review, not the paper exercise that went on when the petition was submitted. Thank you, Chairman, and sorry if I went off the legal front there.
Lance, do you have anything to add to the points you'd already made about where they're still working with the bowling club to look at alternatives?
Councillor Smith, you made reference to there's a report and there's alternative locations, and Ian's made reference there are some costs associated with that. Recognise in terms of the question around council supporting that financially. I think part of the challenge around direct support for that is with Gedling Indoor Bowls Club being a limited company, we have to be conscious of kind of subsidy that we can offer. And again, I don't think Tina may be able to help with that kind of view on it. So I think in terms of the Subsidy Control Act, we just need to be careful around what we can offer with regard to that. What Cabinet have decided on up to now is non-financial support for the Bowls Club. And again, that's where, we've done the report, we've put our officer time into that to assess those alternatives. I think we recognise that the outcome of that at this stage is challenging financially. We continue to commit to meeting with English Indoor Bowls Association around their support for the Bowls Club. We recognise that English Indoor Bowls Association haven't got any ready capital programmes coming forward for that, so there are some challenges around that. But I guess part of the challenge is our ability to, provide some of that additional subsidy. But I don't know if Tina, do you want to?
Thanks, Lance. Yes, so I think all councillors in the room will be fully aware that we do work under a legislative framework, particularly in context of our finances, and we cannot just spend money where we like, and there is restrictions. So Gedling Indoor Bowls is a limited company, and that does restrict us somewhat in being able to fund them directly, like it would any limited company. If any kind of like financial support that we would offer them would have to be on a commercial basis, in which they would have to repay back any support that we offered them, and whether that would financially stack up, we would have to look at it. But I think if the Indoor Bowls Club, if they can't raise capital through bank loans, then I would suggest it probably might be difficult for them to pay back any kind of financial support that we could do. It's something we could perhaps potentially look at in the future, but as I say, it would need to pay back because this is taxpayers' money that we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding that the purpose of the call-in process is to ensure that Cabinet decisions are lawful, evidence-based and properly considered. It's not intended as a mechanism to reopen decisions simply because some members disagree with them. In this case, the Leisure Transformation Programme has been under consideration for a considerable time. Cabinet agreed the direction of travel and facility mix for Carlton Active in September 2025, following, as we've heard, consultation with residents and stakeholders. That decision was not called in at the time. Decision now before us relates to the outputs of the REBA Stage 2 design work and whether the project should move into the next stage of development. Progressing to REBA stages 3 and 4 still does not commit the council to construction. It simply allows the detailed design and full business case to be developed so members can take an informed decision later. The issue of indoor bowls was also revisited during the stage 2 work. We've heard that officers examined options for 3, 4 and 6 rink provision. The conclusion was that including bowls would have significant impacts on size, cost and viability of the overall scheme. And I would ask the movers of the call-in, given the limitations, financial and site limitations, if the scheme were amended to include a bowls hall, which of the other facilities proposed for Carlton Active would members suggest removing? I understand that discussions were held with the Bowls Club about the possibility of a smaller number of rinks. And we've also heard that these discussions in terms of other alternatives is still ongoing. While it is clear that people care deeply about this facility, the Council must consider leisure provision for the whole borough and ensure that the new centre is financially sustainable. For these reasons, I am not yet persuaded that the threshold for call-in has been met. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Muckby.
Okay, here's some evidence for you. First and foremost, to me, the swinging lanes and the gym significantly seems to be increased. So maybe if we'd not increased that considerably, there might have been space for the bowls. So my key statements is regarding to item 1 and 4. Indoor bowls offers a unique combination of social connection and gentle physical maintenance, and it distinguishes itself from solo gym routines in swimming, and that's important. While those activities focus heavily on cardiovascular and muscle strain, bowls prioritise strategic mental engagement and functional mobility in a community setting, which is particularly more important for those suffering with dementia. The key benefits of indoor bowls, along with the social community connection, it serves as a stimulation, a strategic mental stimulation, often called chess on grass, which is why it's particularly good for those who suffer with mental health problems. I take on board what's been said before, and I know you've said there's other alternatives there for people that do the bowls, but actually I fail to see where in any of the documents it's been assessed properly. The basic difference between the other items you offer is this is a low impact functional mobility activity. It helps with balance, coordination, the delivery of action, bending, stepping and swinging. It sharpens hand-eye coordination, improves stability and reduces the risk of falls in daily life. And how many people who are elderly have falls? So that's the first part. The other part as well, okay, so we've mentioned we've got this assisted help in the gym through the NHS. Yeah, that's Carlton Form. That, if I believe rightly, I stand to be corrected, that's with Coral Health, where you get a referral from your doctor, you go to the musculoskeletal, and then you get a referral to Coral Health, then you have an assessment, and then you get a 6-week, 1 day, 1 hour, 6-week programme where you've got to book into. You can't just walk in off the street like you would with the bowls, okay? I went to one of these sessions and I spent more time waiting for a younger person to get off one of the equipment rather than the time I spent actually on the equipment. So I don't think that is a viable alternative. There are also other lot of elderly people there on the same referral programme. And they were on their own, they had very little interaction with anybody else, and they were also waiting. 2 people walked off because they spent more time waiting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yep, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd formally like to second Councillor Sam Smith's proposal that this is referred back to full council. But there isn't any doubt that probably this borough does need a new sports facility. It certainly does. But I do take, with a bit of a pinch of salt, some of the findings of the surveys, given the low level of response. A number of the activities that were suggested for inclusion in the new sports facilities include activities such as the gym, social space, but they're not sports. These are not sports. Bowls is a sport, and I think we all recognise that the mental health benefits from playing a team sport is so significant. But moving on back to the call-in, there's been an implication that indoor bowls will need to be subsidised to make it viable. That's really a bit of a smokescreen, isn't it? If it was really a coherent argument, we wouldn't be having a swimming pool. We'd be scrapping all the football pitches in this borough. If you hire a football pitch, the cost of that does not cover the cost of maintaining, cutting it, marking it, seeding, fertilising, vertidraining. We're not suggesting that we get rid of football pitches in this borough. We're not suggesting that we get rid of swimming pools. So why are we singling out bowls? We've talked at length about the cost of all this, so I'm not going to repeat all of that, but I do think this is the wrong time. Not necessarily the wrong place, it's the wrong time. We're going into LGR. Why are we saddling another authority with our debt?
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have a range of opinions of Carlton Active and the leisure strategy, and that's quite right and proper, but that isn't what we're here to discuss. The leisure strategy is a Cabinet decision, and we are here to assess, has Cabinet followed a correct process in reaching the decisions that it's reached thus far. I think we've heard a very comprehensive outline of the process that has been followed from Lance Dewby, and as such, I believe that there is no reason to call in this decision based on the decision that has been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Mead. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm looking at section 1, which is lack of transparency. Consultation responses and community submissions do not appear to have been fully or accurately reflected in the reports and the final decision-making process. So I'm looking at 2 consultations we did last year. The first one is... Is
this the right screen you want showing?
Yeah.
Councillor Mead?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. So Carlton Active is going to be funded by seal money and a loan. So we've been told in, I think it's a Contact magazine, that the sole consultation and Carlton Active came out on top and blah, blah, blah. So this is what was presented to Cabinet. And it says that 6 additional projects were submitted following on from the consultation. Some were in Calverton. And it says there several new projects relate to infrastructure projects within Calverton have been submitted for consideration as part of the responses to the consultation. And then the projects were scored. Carlton Active came out number 1. The ones for Calverton didn't include the score for match funding, which is the biggest one. They didn't include public use, anything like that. So I got onto the SIL office and said, why is that? And he said, well, we didn't have any of that information. So this was actually the submission. It was the year before I sent this in. And the projects were match funded. And Mike Avery accepted that on the 4th of November 2024. The consultation not currently open. We will retain the comments on file and they will be considered at the appropriate time. So the scoring was, Carlton Active came out on top, 58.5. If you use the proper scoring, 3 Calverton projects come out on top. So Carlton Active gets dropped down to 4th. And interestingly, of all the people that did the consultation, there was only 2 wanted Carlton Active. 52 said they didn't want Carlton Active. So that was the first one, but that information wasn't presented to Cabinet. And then we get into leisure transformation one, which is the second to most recent one, because we've not had the recent one yet. And it says, goes on about the 44,000 again for Calverton that's made up. And then it says, demand analysis demonstrates that Carlton would sustain, an extra 500 on the gym and blah, blah, blah. And it says the existing consultation sets out blah, 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 provides a strong evidence base for investment in Carlton Active. Its findings directly inform the proposed facility mix. So that's what Cabinet were told. So we get on to the consultation. Biggest first thing is parking. So Carlton Active's got 100 parking spaces, needs 360. So then we get on to the questions. Of course, the general ones, things like, do you want a new gym? Yeah, everybody signs it. So the questions are, please explain why refurbishment would not make you want to attend, etc., etc. So all the questions, the top 3, Calverton, 70%. Calverton, demand for investment in Calverton instead of Carlton, 45%. And you go through page after page. Third biggest one was bowls. Health and well-being, upgrade Calverton. Every single question, you go through the whole consultation, upgrade Calverton. This general one's about seating and cafes and stuff like that. You go through the whole consultation, there is not one mention of Carlton. Not one mention. So this is the public consultation. Top three for seniors. Indoor bowls, 44%. Calverton over Carlton, 36%. Carry on all the way through. We listened to Lance tonight and the evidence is there for Carlton Active. I don't see it. So we don't want to take what the public say, let's take what the staff say. So this was the staff. So this was 20 leisure staff from all the leisure centres. And what did they say? Staff highlighted the vital role existing centres, especially Calverton Leisure Centre, play in serving vulnerable populations, older, blah, blah, blah. Even the staff never mentioned Carlton Active. So I think that proves point 1. And I just say I agree with Councillor Smith for once. First time for 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. Lance, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in my report earlier, there's a kind of whole suite of information we need to take into account. So some of those, so I think, some of the figures I presented earlier are facts around the feedback from the public survey. They had 1,500 people respond to it. Hey, there is a mixed views in the community. We mentioned that before. I think, we're confident that we have the consultation feedback that supports what we're trying to do. As I said earlier, and I made reference around the bowls community in particular, and there may be other users out there, but we recognise that there's a whole range and mix of needs out there that we need to take into account. I think one of the challenges around a project with this, we've got consultation, we've also got community insight and health need that we have to analyse as well. as part of that. And we also need to take into account kind of the financial sustainability as well. So these programs are quite challenging in that respect to meet all those wider needs. I mentioned about Calm Forum earlier. You know, we've got big issues at Calm Forum, and part of that is the ongoing sustainability of that site. You know, we're working closely with the County Council around the mitigation measures around that, but part of the consideration of decisions is around how do we replace Calm Forum as well. And obviously that has swim and gym and other facilities as well that we need to protect for the future. So difficult decisions have to be made. I guess we have to look at consultation. Obviously Councillor Meads has presented some of the findings of that. I've talked about some of the findings of the consultation as well. You know, there's a whole range of health needs, and we recognise that actually older people as a demographic is really important. We recognise people with health conditions are important. We've all talked a lot about that today. Young people is also important, and the provision to protect those facilities and activities we have at Calm Forum, the swimming, is essential, because we've got an inherent risk moving into the future that actually at some point we won't have that facility. And as I said, I guess some of the technicality of this is how do we make it financially stack up. So we're going through the REBA progress of works at the moment, which is what you have to do for a construction programme. And again, some of the technical detail that consultants are looking at for us, the experts, that work is there to make sure that we have a robust business case moving forward. So that does include supply and demand as well. So actually where the supply meets the needs of the population to protect facilities, obviously that helps to support the business case. And that's why probably the likes of swim and gym comes out strong in terms of that analysis that has been done. So it's a really difficult and complex piece of work, because there's so much information to assess and analyse, and that the documents that are presented to Cabinet over 2 Cabinet meetings are quite extensive, going to hundreds of pages, don't they, in terms of information. And again, you know, I'm confident that we're looking to do the right thing, whilst also recognising where there could be a loss of facilities and how we mitigate that for the community. And as I said, you know, that's around. It's not just about those decisions, but how we can do that ongoing engagement with members of the community to try and get what we provide, what we currently provide and what we can provide in the future, right for everyone in the community.
Can I ask you a question?
Excuse me, if you want to ask a question, can you come up to the microphone, please? You need to use the microphone because the meeting's... Can you press the red...
All right. I've got bronchitis, so if I cough, you're like, sorry, that's why I enjoy sport. You say it's going to Rebus 3, the extra design, doesn't guarantee you're going to get the money and doesn't guarantee it goes forward. But in the meantime, April the 30th, we'll be out. So we could be out, you could have an empty building that you're never going to do anything with because you can't get the money. So what use is that? Why don't you let us have another 12 months while you're going through your design, while you're going trying to get your money? And if it costs more than 30 million, does the council guarantee it's going to be done for 30 million? I'm a ratepayer in this borough. I've got to fund it. So I'd just like to know if you've got any answers to those questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm afraid that point isn't relevant to the call-in, but I can... No, but I can ask that someone from Cabinet answers that question for you, but it's not about what the call-in is about today. Okay. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Yes. Councillor Meads, you've just asked. Are you asking again?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for that offer. Yeah, I think I've proven point 1. when I
Right,
stood at the lectern, that the Cabinet weren't given the full information on 2 reports, really.
But okay, but you've made your point. You don't need to make it again.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Brocklebank.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm going to try not to repeat points that have been made by the councillors, so I'll try and keep it brief. But I did want to first of all just thank all the members of the Bowls Club who have attended in great numbers today. It might not be clear from the video, but there's a lot of members that are here, and I wanted to thank them for turning out once again. I think their passion and commitment has been self-evident, and they've been a credit to the club throughout the process of all of the engagements gone on. And this has clearly been an emotive issue. I'm a keen sportsman, but not a very good bowls player, so I haven't been down to Richard Herodoff and myself. Also want to thank the councillors that brought the call in and the officers that prepared the documents for today's meeting. I think it's really important that decision-making in the Cabinet is open and transparent. One of the ways we ensure that is through this committee. I also hope that the Cabinet exec take on board the feedback from councillors today to help inform Carlton Active moving forward, regardless of how the vote then goes. Most of the questions I had have already been asked by other people, so thank you very much. I think it's just to get back to the point around that, as was outlined at the beginning, the role of the committee is laid down in the Localism Act, the local authorities overviewing scrutiny regulations, if anyone's had a read of those in the last week, and the Gedling Borough Constitution. And basically that has a requirement on the councillors that we leave our emotions and personal opinions and our preferences at the door when we come to this committee, and we just engage in the debate and vote in an objective and dispassionate manner. So we understand it's a very emotive issue, but we can't vote on those lines. Just to clarify that for the calling to succeed, we need to see evidence that consultation was absent, relevant impacts were ignored, risks were not assessed, and due regard was not given. But the report and the presentation we've had from Lance presents a clear rationale that there has been a consideration of the options, the financial assessment, there's been governance input and risk awareness all the way along the process. And while members of the public may reasonably disagree with the decisions that have been taken, disagreement is not procedural failure. The decision ultimately has to rest with the Cabinet, and they've already made an informed decision. The call-in exists to correct flawed decision-making, not revisit decisions made simply because some of us would have made a different one. And on the evidence before us tonight, that process appears sound, and for that reason I can't support the call-in. As a final point, I hope that this is all accurately reported on social media and in the local press, because I know there's a danger with the call-in process. That's very difficult, and as we've seen tonight, that there's a difficult process there. And just finally, I note that in the report that the council is committed to continued engagement with the Bowls Club and stakeholders to explore alternative options. And I just want to call on the relevant Cabinet members and the officers and senior members of the Bowls Club to get back round the table and start looking at those alternatives, including possible funding streams and project bids. I understand the council aren't going to have the money, but if they can work with them to find those funding streams, I think that would be very helpful. I know that's stepping outside the bounds, and I apologise. But I just want to push that the council does start looking at those alternative options with them moving forward and help to protect the future of the club, wherever that may be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else is indicating they wish to speak, so we'll move. Well, you have already asked your questions.
It was mentioned about the structure of the... I think I need to respond to that.
Is it relevant to the Cabinet to us scrutinising Cabinet's decision?
Well, it is important because they're talking about the Bowls Club, and actually what we do is we support the wider community. We are not just a group of competitive bowlers. We actually support the wider community in terms of NHS social prescribing, you name it, dementia care. And I just think that point keeps being lost. You mentioned about not being able to support financially a limited company. We are actually a company limited by guarantee, and it was set up in 1987 with the council, that structure. So I know, legislation changes, but, you're saying that you can't support us financially, and I just wanted to clarify, this is not just about the bowling club, this is about the whole community that uses that centre. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we're being asked to vote on, to consider, was the request for a call-in, and then we have 3 courses to take. So what we'll do is vote on option 1 to start in, and that is that there is, the call-in is dismissed because we don't think that there are grounds that Cabinet didn't take all those things into consideration, and in that case the decision made by Cabinet stands. If that's lost, then we'll move to the other 2 votes. Does that make sense? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just to clarify a technical point on the process, a motion was moved by Councillor Martin Smith and I before you came to that conclusion that we moved this decision to full council. And my understanding of the Constitution is once a motion is laid, you take a vote on that before somebody else in the room, I think two people down there, moved that we disregard the call-in and send it to back to Cabinet as no case to answer. So I think the votes need to be taken in that order that they were suggested by members.
My understanding, we don't have motions at overview and scrutiny, but...
What you're proposing, Councillor Smith, is already at recommendation number 3.
Yes, we vote on that first.
No, we don't vote. That would not be a logical process. The logical process is we determine whether there's enough evidence to warrant the call-in and a review of the decision. If we think there is, then we would move to which body we think is the best one to deal with it. We can't decide who's going to deal with something that we haven't voted on that we need yet. That doesn't make any sense. So we have a motion to, before we decide whether there's evidence of a call-in, to move to that it should go back to full council. So I'm asking the committee if they're in favour of that motion or not. So all those in favour? And any against? And any abstentions? So that's lost. So we'll go back to the way that I suggested. So all those in favour that the call-in is dismissed and the original decision proceeds, please show. Okay. And any against? And any abstentions? So the call-in is dismissed. Can I thank everyone from the public who came and for expressing your views so well. There was commitment from Lance that Cabinet are going to continue working with the Bowls Club on alternatives, and I will try and get somebody to answer your question about how long it's viable to keep the lease running. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, so obviously people are welcome to stay for the whole meeting. I doubt it'll be as exciting as we move forward, but please leave quietly so that we can continue the meeting. Thank you. Okay, can we move on, please? We're now going to review and scrutinise portfolio holder for communities and place. So can I ask Linda Pearson, thank you, to come.
This is where we all pray that IT works for me. Oh. I might need help. Yes, I might need some assistance. I think I need professional help. See, it worked when we tried it earlier. Thank you.
Can I just advise council while we're waiting that there was a bag left? It's been moved outside, but if it's anyone's here, then feel free to go and get it. But the officers were uncomfortable with having an unattended bag. Not quite sure how it helps us. It has been claimed. We can all relax.
Another skill of mine is IED detection training. I do train people in that if you need some help. So I'm sorry if this is a long waiting coming. It was really important that you guys had that discussion earlier. But a little bit about the portfolio, and a huge thank you to Kate and Karen, Ben and the team, and also Fiona, Jane, Sarah and Lance, who of course have moved sideways and I've lost them, so I'm terribly sorry about that. This should have been sent out to you guys, and there are some questions that are answered within it. So hopefully you've got this. So, I will make it as quick as I can. It's been a long day, I know, for you already. Just really want to have a look at what the portfolio covers, or what it has covered over the last year, how we measure the success, what went well, what we're going to continue to do with no budget, not little budget, no budget, and a much smaller team of people working in it, and the wider context, how we mix with the rest of the portfolios to make this a continued success. So you should have all of this information. What was missing, sorry, I don't want to go, I can go back. Yeah, that's fine. So the scope of the portfolio, as you'll probably all know, heritage, I'm not going to read them all out. We have missed off there the business support, which is the network events, the sustainability grants, etc. That's actually not on the bottom of there, but that is included within the portfolio. Events, this is the biggest area that I think you guys have been very interested in. We haven't been able to provide the events that we saw 3 years ago, 2 years ago. They've become less and less, and that's because they're a huge financial impact on the council. Not just finance, but also the time that it takes to provide these, the people power, if you like. These are the events that we did manage to provide last year very, very successfully. There's a little bit more information about them later. So the Summer Fair, which will continue this year in June. The Remembrance, obviously extremely important to everybody. The Country Park was a 10-year anniversary. Can't believe it's 10 years anniversary. The Christmas lights switch on, and obviously these are just the events that we're leading. The school game events and the Pride of Gedling, which was absolutely fantastic. I'm still enjoying that. There's lots of information here. If you want to take it away and read it, I'm certainly not going to read them all out to you, but it gives a bit more information on where the time, the money and the enthusiasm has been spent. The project, a little bit of an overview and what it delivered in the end. Hopefully it reached all of those delivery milestones. As a parish council, violence against women and girls is a huge area that we do an awful lot of work in lots of different places. This particularly was the White Ribbon Day press release and some help, and this actually went over also into another portfolio. Catherine Fox did an awful lot of work in this, so I can't take the thank you for that. Digital inclusion project, this is really exciting and continuing. There's a lot of work going out to the youth groups and the older groups and anybody that feels isolated by digital inclusion. Still ongoing, there's an event on Saturday morning, which I believe is oversubscribed to get people together, the youth and the older groups together, because they've got a lot in common as well as a lot of differences around social inclusion, similar and different worries. I'm really excited about this one, and it's continuing, and the event is on the 14th of March at the Daybrooks. I'm going to pop my head in the door, but all of the senior council are going, and most of the youth council are going to attend, and they're going to help each other to talk about digital inclusion and what they can get out of it. And we looked at how we could measure success. So most important, the safe and legal event delivery. So there's a lot that goes into delivery of an event. You guys will know you'll deliver your own events in your own communities. From vehicle mitigation to the safety of people attending, to inclusion, to making it safe for people in wheelchairs, people with young babies, that things are lit up, that we've got enough stewards, that we can stop traffic where we need to stop traffic. And it has to be, there's a legal entity, there's health and safety, there's risk assessments, there's an awful lot involved. And we get a lot of feedback from the attendees, not just how they enjoyed it, but what they also might have found difficult to contend with. Could they get a wheelchair around an event, for example? And from that feedback, we look at improving it each and every time, and we've seen improvement and an awful lot of really good feedback. Specific projects, there's future opportunities. Moving forward, link and inclusion and local economies impact measures. There's an awful lot going on with the new government outlook framework. This is something I'm quite excited about, actually. The key outcomes to identify things to prevent homelessness, community safety back into the community. So we're continuing to use our events to give information to people and to work with local communities to improve. There's a Gedling CAN, the Safe Transition to an Independent Community and Voluntary Sector Support Model. Basically, we got together and we said we haven't got enough locally. There's an awful lot of problems getting the NCVS together. We've got gaps in funding, we've got gaps in local support. Let's work together. And we worked together and created a fantastic local, made themselves situation where we can spread information, feedback, work with each other, best practice. Digital inclusion I spoke about very briefly, and there's lots of future opportunities. What's going well? Fantastic teamwork. We've had limited numbers of people working on huge projects. It's even more limited now, as Lance will tell you. He's been spread over 3 or 4 jobs. Fiona's moved over, Jane's moved over, an awful lot of people have been lost with their knowledge and their passion. But they've worked really hard internally and worked with external groups. The community and partnership engagement is huge. We've had to hand over a lot of this work to the local community groups. They create, they design their own community events. We offer them support and guidance. We signpost them in the right direction, and there's a safety action group that will actually help them to make sure it's safe and legal. But a lot of community groups have had to stand and create their own from now on. We can't do it for them. We can't afford to do it for them. We haven't the provision to do it. There have been small amounts of sponsorship to help with events. We found money through UK SPF. We found funding in other areas. We pointed people to funding. There are still areas for improvement. The communications engagement team are working across the council and with all of the external groups to try and improve the communications, feedback in both directions. We need to look at the costs, the increased costs, vehicle mitigation for, I haven't got the figure off the top of my head, I will try and look in a split second, for the remembrance service is humongous, the amount of money we have to spend to put a couple of barriers up and make it safe for people. Well spent, but it is an awful lot of council money. We have to look at the impact assessment. We have to look at who's included, who's excluded, have we got any issues making it an inclusive event. And it has to be reflected in the event. So we have a lot of staff that give up their time, for example, for the Arnold Fair. They give up their time. A lot of people come in and do overtime for us. A lot of staff give a lot of their time for nothing. And we have to weigh up the amount of money that we're spending as a council, the amount of free time people are giving to make sure that it actually then translates into the right sort of event. And there are some opportunities, there's also some challenges. Across the whole council, there's no money for anything. I think this slightly earlier on today was a good example of that. We haven't got a lot of money for discretionary service provision, as lovely as it is to provide some of these heritage, the events, people love them. It's the one thing the council does that makes people smile. It's not collecting your council tax or refusing your planning application. But it is very difficult to find the money to do that and to do that properly and safely for people. It's rising. The cost for security, equipment, insurance, it's all going up. We're not sure where we're going to be with the local government reorganisation. We don't want to design the next 18 months to find that we can't deliver that, but we don't want to undeliver either. And the safety requirements, Martin laws come in. There's a number of other safety, health and safety areas that have changed. We've got to look at whether we can deliver those safely. If we can't deliver them, we can't deliver an event. Reorganisation, a huge amount of work. The good and wonderful thing is that we've got really strong foundations. The Safety Advisory Group, which covers the whole county, is a group that looks at all community events. We help support, signpost them to be able to deliver those properly. We've got really good relationships with the neighbouring councils, and we need those. We need to work, and we use best practice ideas from them. If things don't go well, we share that and we look for the best way moving forward. Gedling CAN offers long-term sustainability. And the digital inclusion influence. For us as a council, if we can leave a true legacy of all of our council constituents being able to access what they need, either electronically or face-to-face, it's a good legacy to leave with people. MHCLG, and in fairness, is something that I'm not overly familiar with. It's the Ministry of Housing Communities of local government. They're looking on getting data ready in all sorts of areas and improving affordable housing, community situations for people, something that we're going to be looking into. We've already got the CEOs group that are coordinating activities across the county, and we don't know with local government reorganisation where we're going to be, but we're going to work with it without any funding, but we are going to work with it and see if we continue to deliver what we've delivered. Urban and rural focus is a difficult one. We've had a recent conversation in council around urban and rural focus, but we try very hard to work with the urban settings and also the rural. Part of this portfolio is to work with the parish clerks, which has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm looking at over here at my esteemed colleague over here, because we work really hard in the parish clerks, haven't we? And there's an awful lot of benchmarking. We work really hard in sharing information and building relationships with the officers at the council. And I think it's a really fantastic group of people. The parish clerks have an awful lot to offer in knowledge and experience. And that helps us get out into those rural communities that perhaps we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. We do have the Event Organisers Toolkit. If ever you've used it, have a look. If you're going to help organise a local event, it's a really good place to start. And the Play Forum grant agreement is still in place, thank goodness, because I think it's a fantastic facility that we use, and we certainly spend more than the few thousand that we give you. So thank you. So for me, I just want to say a huge thank you to those guys in the team that have helped us get through this very difficult year. And we've delivered a parish clerks conference, which I missed this year, unfortunately, due to illness, but conference which has worked extremely well over the last couple of years. We have the senior forum, extremely vocal, intelligent, well-educated group of people that have an awful lot of experience. There's probably 600 or 700 years of experience in the room when they come to meet. And they disseminate lots of council information to those people in the community that are older and maybe isolated that can't get in to speak to us. The parish clerks meet and say is absolutely fantastic. We've continued the heritage. We will continue to make sure that that leaflet is still available for people to enjoy. And if funding comes in from any direction, we'll continue to use it to build on what we've got. Very quick, but roundup of what we do within the portfolio. Have you got any further questions? Not difficult ones, though, please, it's late.
Right, so I've got a few hands up, so I'll just move round. So Councillor Ellis.
Yes, thank you. Actually, it's a couple of compliments rather than questions. I'd like to thank you for sending out your presentation in advance and your crisp, succinct delivery, which was very much appreciated, I have to say. Okay. And then to officers, and I know obviously they were involved in preparing that, but I actually think people have worked incredibly hard to deliver at least as much, if not more, with less. And I do recognise that as someone who's involved in the voluntary sector. And I guess I ought to perhaps declare my non-pecuniary interest with regard to the Play Forum. We do appreciate the support that we get. And I also want to say that the development of Gedling CAN strikes me as a very beneficial organisation, much needed. And again, the information that we get through that is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
Yes, thank you. I can only echo what Councillor Ellis just said, and also reminds me of that character in the Mikado, Lord High Everything Else. What I wanted to ask really is, what does heritage mean, and what events have been planned for count under that?
I think from a historic point of view, personally, heritage means anything you want it to be. It could be something new, something old. It's something that we're proud of in Gedling. Get my words out. We have made a fantastic heritage booklet, which isn't brand new, but a lot of the information in it hasn't changed. It's got historical information in it. And it's about encouraging people locally to go and see what heritage Gedling and the wider market has. So it's historic things that made us who we are, information about the mines. The GAR, information about how that got there, why it's there, why it's called the GAR, why it splits down the middle of an old mining area. It's also about getting new people in, so that's going to raise our economy. So it's to encourage people to come in and say there's some historic heritage information here that you need to see, that you might enjoy. So it's really bringing together the older things that I personally feel of Gedling to try and keep those as part of our legacy, as well as all the council things that we've got. I think it's personal to everybody. The booklet, if you haven't ever seen it, and you don't have to admit this in here, but if you haven't, get a copy and have a look. I learned a lot about Gedling when I first moved here, when I got that book. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I've got that. I might talk to you later about something.
About a historic group, yeah.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the final page of Councillor Pearson's report. I'm slightly confused. The Council's funding agreement with Gedling Play Forum means that a relatively small amount of funding can support events in other areas. In 25-26, events took place in Calverton, Bestwood Village, Warren Hill, Netherfield and Carlton. Were those, so two strands to this, did any money go to those other areas for those events? Because I don't recall that. But what I do know happened in Netherfield was that I had invaluable help from Sarah Cook, Hannah Glover and Jane Ansell regarding the Christmas light switch on. It was extremely difficult to organise. There was their expertise as far as doing the event management plan, getting agency staff to help, getting the road closures, all with no funding, and they were very generous with their time. So I wanted to formally thank them for that. And also, without money from the councillors' pots, that those events wouldn't have been able to, particularly the Christmas light switch on, wouldn't have been able to happen because there was, like you say, there's no communities budget. So we'll just have to get more creative, getting funding going forwards. But thank you to officers.
Thank you. I'll pass that on. I mean, the budget for those items we had listed previously on page 4 was just about 37,000, and that covered the Arnold Lights, the Remembrance, I think it was the schools game event, the Pride of Gedling. There was no money left after that to spend on events. Most of the support was in just that, the expertise, Sarah and her team, the engineers coming down to put your lights on. I know we all had lights turning on the same day this year, which is something we need to perhaps look at for the end of this year. But there was lots of other events like Netherfield Pride. Those events we supported, we gave advice, we pointed people in the right direction, we helped people do risk assessments of stalls, the safety aspect, we liaised with local police to make sure that they were aware of everything going on. It wasn't money, but it was time well spent. So again, this year, without a budget, we'll do our utmost best to support what people need. We'll see how creative we can get. I don't mind picking up litter at Arnold Fair, that's my area of speciality. So if anybody else wants to come to the Arnold Fair and pick up rubbish, that's absolutely fine.
Councillor Martin-Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Would you mind just going back to the previous slide, please? I think that's what Councillor Hunt was referring to. So looking at the top bit, you talk about at least 15 events across the borough received some form of support. I assume that this is indirect support submitted via councillors into their wards. Is that what you're...
I have some of these listed. So, for example, the Strength in Community, VCS requires
Pride reports, the Netherfield Pride. This was hands-on support and signposted support. In addition to that, there are support given by, I know the councillors are very supportive of local communities for events, Christmas Switch On, other events that happen. This particularly is the events that we've helped to support without the councillors' pot. This isn't included in this.
Yeah, because I think it's Cabinet is actually suggesting that the councillors' pot, community fund, is actually reduced. You've mentioned 15 events there. I've just very quickly counted up 10 events that I've supported within my ward that are all at risk if this Cabinet decides to take away that funding. You also mentioned a very successful Parish conference, which I did attend. Unfortunately, I know you couldn't be there, but I see that's going to be taken off the list as well for next year. It is disappointing that in one hand, you know, we want to praise what's going on, but then we want to take away.
As far as, if I'll just say about the council pot, whatever we call it, the grants, that's all under consultation at the moment, not for this area. We are going to have to be extremely supportive physically. We're going to have to do what we can to point people in the direction of funding if we can't provide funding for them. We'll have to see where the community awards process goes to, so that isn't for here, is it? As far as the parish council, it's funding. There isn't any funding in this budget. So if I am still in the position of holding a cabinet portfolio, which isn't related directly to budget, we will do our best to deliver what we can with what we've got, but we've got no budget, we have no budget, and it is very disappointing. The parish council, parish clerks conference has been absolutely fantastic, and we've learnt an awful lot from it and shared a lot of experience and built a great relationship. As a portfolio home, I'm kind of beholden to the money that they give us to do what we can with.
But also, Councillor Pearson, part of your remit is to support parish councils and rural affairs. So please, I'd like you to stand up in Cabinet and support the areas that you're there to support. I did appreciate that you came out to Ravenshead to a parish council meeting. All due respect, that's all I've seen of you in our community. I don't know whether Councillor Meads, you know, has seen much of you in Calverton and Burton Joyce, etc. I didn't hear you stand up when we asked for a rural officer as part of the alternative budget last week. That was disappointing. Unfortunately, Labour members tend to stick together, don't they? They don't always do what's best for the community. Enough of that point, but there's been some great work gone on in this borough. You know, some great events. I wish we could afford more. But please don't forget the rural events that the councillors work so hard with volunteers to put on.
Yeah, thank you. I know you do an awful lot in your community. I do know that, as does lots of other people in the room. On a personal basis, I'm not sure what the rural officer information was about. I didn't have enough information to make it a personal choice, and it is a personal choice, and I will make my own decision based on that. We're not whipped to make those decisions. In supporting the parish clerks and the parish councils, if I'm still here doing this job, I would happily come out to see you at your council meetings if I'm invited. I don't feel like I want to intrude, but if I'm invited, I'll happily come out. You put the kettle on, I'll be there.
Open invitation to Ravenshead, Limby, Papplewick and Newstead Village, ones that I support.
Accepted.
Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pearson. A couple of things really. No UK Prosperity Fund, is that finished now?
There's no, everything's been accounted for if it hasn't.
No, I mean, is there another round or is that it now?
No, that's it.
Right, okay. And did you have, I was really unhappy about the last round because me and Jane went to your big do at the Richard Everett Centre and we thought, yeah, we always class ourselves as 9% of the borough because that's what we are. We think, yeah, we'll have 9% of 1.2 million. And then and Cabinet approved a report from an officer and it was all laid out already, 23 projects. The furthest one north was Arnold. And I was gutted really, and especially things like Christmas lights, where we all put Christmas lights on, and it was just stuck with Arnold, Mapley, Carton and Gedling, while they all got £12,500 each, I think, for Christmas lights this year. We all put Christmas lights on, you know, and everybody in the borough pays for these events. Everybody in Ravenshead, Limby, Papplewick, Calverton, Burton Joyce, you name it, pays for the Arnold light switch on Then you got another 12.5 grand off the UK Prosperity money, and nobody else got a look in, so I was really cheesed off about that. But obviously that's not you personally. But it's just the same thing, and the councillor's not here tonight. I think he spoke against Councillor Smith, saying he was trying to create division. He wasn't trying to create division. There is a division. But these councillors are trying to just stick up for their own areas. That's all it is. He's not trying to create a division. You know, and there's areas that have missed out on a load of money. Nobody tells them. I mean, you might get an odd email.
Councillor Meads, is this a question for Councillor Pearson or?
I think that's about it, thank you.
Thank you.
I can agree that we all want to look at, we all look after our own constituent, our area, we do our utmost best for them, you included. It's extremely difficult, there isn't enough money to go around. There isn't. I wish there were. But I do know that all of you put an awful lot in to support this and the Christmas tree lights and everything else that you do, which is fantastic. A lot of benefit to your local people.
Even do anything, you know. We're spending on our 2 events, we spend 15 grand a year now on our Christmas lights and our summer fair. These other areas, they're all paying the band D, G, E, F precepts in, and they can't afford it. And I think it's, you know, something's gone wrong with this UK Prosperity Fund. Anyway, that's mine.
Councillor Sam Smith.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Linda, for your presentation. You know, in the report we've got in front of us, it lists about 5 responsibilities you've got, and rural affairs is the bottom one. As you can see, there's a bit of a carry-on from full council last week that the passion for rural affairs is strong, because I think it's fair to say we feel like we're neglected a lot by this council. So seeing that you have responsibility for that is important and good. I just wondered if you could tell us how much of your time is taken up with rural affairs, what your diary looks like with dealing with that. Is it cross-departmental? You know, we have a lot of problems with road sweeping not getting done. Do you pick that up with the other cabinet members? How much of your time?
No, I don't pick up the road sweeping aspect. That comes into Margie's waste services portfolio holder. If I get feedback from the parish clerks or the parish councils, I will help you make sure that goes back to the right way, although you're quite capable of doing that yourselves. I have a feed of information from the Rural Action Group about rural affairs, but nothing directly that relates to, for example, Burton Joyce Stoke Bardoff. So if there's information I can help you with, if there is something I can do with you guys, then I'm open to help him. I don't know what help I can be, but I am certainly open to feeding that back or trying to locate information for you. Do you want me to speak to you separately? Yeah? And Andy.
Are there any other questions for Councillor Pearson? No? Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting as well. So committee will remember that we agreed that we would try and get the presentations and any papers out to people in advance. We only got them out Friday. There was a bit of a mix-up. So we will try and get them out sooner next time, so in the hopes that people can try and get some questions in advance, and then you can get a fuller response from the portfolio holder at the meeting. Okay, moving on then. So the Q3 performance report, and I believe Tina's going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a report of the senior leadership team, which sets out the performance data for the council at the end of Q3, which represents periods from October to December 2025. So starting with the actions of the annual delivery plan, there are 52 actions included in the annual delivery plan, spanning over 6 different themes. Milestones are attached to each of these actions, and the number of milestones completed in Q3 was 25. This represents a cumulative total rate of milestones of 55.1%. And the table set out in paragraph 2.6 shows the number of completed milestones to date, and also the expected number which is due in Q4. More information on the completed Q3 milestones is also available in Appendix A. So going on to achievements in Q3, Paragraph 3.1 details some of the achievements from Q3 that I would like to bring to your attention. So we have been successful in our bid for the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology funding, with a grant being awarded of £36,000 from the government to fund some intergenerational pilot activities. Communities and partnership organisations have successfully applied to Gedling Digital Inclusion Grant Fund, which is funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The new Gedling Borough website is now live, along with a new improved functionality, including the new integrated bin calendars and lookup for bin collection notifications. And as a result of the transformation work, including the implementation of new systems and functionality, along with new ways of working, there has been a further reduction in complaints in Q3 within the waste services area in particular, seeing a 55% reduction compared to that in Q2. The Greater Colton Plan for Neighbourhoods Regeneration Plan and 4-year investment plan were approved by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And we've also had some sales of some of our development sites on Burton Road and Station Road that were sold at public auction. So moving on to performance indicators, there are 30 performance indicators which are monitored on a quarterly basis. In 25-26, in Q3, 14 of these indicators either met or exceeded their targets, 5 were below target, and 8 indicators are for tracking purposes only. For 3 of the indicators, data is not available due to it not being held in the systems at the present, and work is underway to address this issue. So the table in paragraph 2.7 shows the examples of particularly positive performance, and I'll draw your attention to just a few of these. So the percentage of customers that are satisfied with overall customer services is 98% this quarter against a target of 94%. The percentage of council tax collected is 80.62% against a target of 73.88%. And the percentage of major planning applications processed within 13 weeks, which was again 100% for Q3 against a target of 92%. And then the number of rented households with health and safety hazards that have been remedied following the council's intervention. Given the importance of these actions, it's excellent to see that against a target of 13, the number that have been remedied was 44. So that is a really good outcome there. So the reasons for the 5 indicators that have missed target in Q1 are set out in paragraph 4.4. I'm not going to read through all of those, but I will highlight a couple of those where we have missed the target. The first of those is the current is a housing benefits and council tax reduction scheme and the time taken to process new claims. So currently it's 27 days against a target of 15 days, and the same with housing benefit and council tax reduction scheme to process changes in circumstances is 7.3 days against a target of 5 days. Now we acknowledge that we really need to get these numbers up. There is some current resourcing challenges, I think were also highlighted in Q2, following the loss of team leaders and an administrative team member. There are contribution factors. Also, one of the other factors is the move to universal credit has been slower than what was initially envisaged, so we just don't have sufficient numbers of bums on seats to be able to deliver these targets. So there is we are looking at the resources. A report has been taken to SRT, and there's currently looking at restructuring that team to issue to resolve those issues and get some additional staff in to ensure we can get those targets up, because as I'm sure you'll all agree, they're really important targets. So also working days lost to sickness, absence on a rolling 12-month total is 15.1 days against a target of 9 days. So we continue to manage some long-term sickness absences, and all measures are being taken to work with occupational health and staff members concerned with a view of supporting them with a return to work. And we also had the introduction of a new absence management policy, which enables us to deal with some of those more challenging absences. And then the percentage to customer services answered within the SLA, so that's 40 seconds, was 82.6% against a target of 85%. So only very slightly down, but new ways of working have been introduced, and it's resulted in this taking a little longer to complete calls while we adjust to this. And it's had an effect also on the time taken to answer the calls over the last quarter. So regarding complaints and MP letters and compliments, paragraph 2.9 provides a summary of this position. These continue to be reviewed regularly by the senior leadership team, and it's worth noting that the number of complaints actually received was 47% fewer than in quarter two, as we continue to make improvements, and this was particularly due to waste services. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions where I can.
Can I ask a question first? I appreciate you said that work's been done to improve the data collection, but I don't understand why we've got performance indicators for things that we don't hold the data on. Doesn't?
I think we do hold the data. It's just that we wasn't able to get it at present. I think some of it comes from an external source, and it's quite hard to get hold of that sometimes. So we are looking at those performance indicators and what we can do around that.
Oh, Councillor Hunt, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Tina, do you know, with the housing benefits and tax reduction scheme claims, if they are granted, would the grant run from the date of receipt or from the date of the processing of the application? Because that would make quite a big difference.
So it will be when that person is eligible for the support.
Right, what I mean is the day we receive the application, does it run from them? If they're granted it, or does it have to wait until the 20? If it takes us 3 weeks to process it, for instance.
If we're late processing it, they will still get access to their benefits.
Okay.
So they will be backdated.
Right.
Because it's from when they become eligible for those benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Brocklebank.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina. A couple of quick ones, hopefully. I noticed and you referenced it, the massive increase in compliments. Apologies if I've missed it somewhere in there, but do we know where that came from? Is there something that we've been doing amazingly in that quarter that needs to be fed back somewhere? And just because we seem to be getting, I work in complaints, we seem to get endless MP letters these days. I'm just interested if there's any theme from because I think was it 71 letters from MPs, just if there's any themes of things that the MPs are coming through to us with and what we're doing to try and,
Off the top of my head, I don't know, because this is called 3 data, but I can find that out for you. I think a lot of the compliments were about leisure services, actually, if I recall, leisure and the theatre.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Tina. Just one very quick question. I was wondering who the site on Burton Road was sold to and if you know what plans they have for it.
I don't know that, unfortunately. I don't know if it's restricted. Natalie, do you have any?
We don't have the details of it specifically, but if you are interested, you would be able to pull a record off the land registry to establish who the new owner is.
They were sold by auction, so I'm not sure how that works. I've never actually auctioned anything myself, but
You don't know if there's been any planning applications for it?
I don't know, but we can find out for you. We can ask the planning team. Get back to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Strong and then Councillor Meads.
But yes, following on from that, I was just going to ask actually what sites were these in Burton Road and Station Road, because I've been racking my brains to think where they are.
So one site is at the bottom of Colton Hill, where all the hoarding is, opposite the Colton Square. So there's all that red hoarding. The other site is on Station Road as you're entering into Netherfield, and just before you get to the crossing. that site there.
Councillor Meads.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Tina, and thank you for the emails over the last few weeks. It makes a nice change to get answers back off people, and I really like that. Because I get a lot of answers, but when I read the answer, it doesn't really answer what I'm asking, but you've been great on that. I got a notification, one of the road missed today with the bins collection in Calverton. That was Reynolds Way, that got missed. And I sent an email today, and I copied Sarah in it. It's about one of Gedling's own parks in Calverton. And I wondered whether you've got any policies of how often you measure anything, how often you clean them or inspect. Well, I don't know, you inspect them every week. Have you got a set guidelines for repairs and stuff? Because I got an email today off an officer, and I'd already made my mind up when I got back home, I was sending off this article to Gedling Eye, because it's a Gedling park and it's just been left for years and years, and you've had 150,000 quid for it or something, 106 money to look after it. And Maria helped me a year ago. She got some repairs done, absolutely abysmal, and I've been trying to get it sorted out ever since. And I got a reply today. It's not the reply I wanted, because you're going to have to wait to employ, you're waiting to set somebody on before you can sort the repairs out. But it's not been cleaned since Gedling has had this park. I think it's like 7 or 8 years now.
Sorry, Councillor Meads.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, well, okay. Have you got any guidelines or performance stuff or anything else on how you look after your own parks?
Well, luckily we have Sarah here today,
Yes.
so I'm going to pass that one on to her.
So I can't advise specifically on cleaning, but in terms of maintenance, we do check them, we do inspect them every week. We also have an independent inspection annually on every park to make sure that we've got that independent advice. We have identified some concerns around the quality of those checks that have been carried out, which I think was included in the email that you received earlier today, which we're now addressing. So we've had a change in personnel. We've got a new process. As you say, we're looking to recruit into that newly vacant post, and that will see a shift in that quality over the coming months.
And is that the standard of you look after, well, lack of, whatever you want to call it, failing, is that the same across all Gedling's parks, or is it just that particular park?
At the moment, we don't know. We haven't been able to inspect all of them as a kind of part of that work, but we will be looking at quality of all of them and looking at where we are and what we need to do.
Okay. Right. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meads. We will add your compliment to Tina to the Q4 report.
She's catching Emma up now. Emma's my favourite employee.
And any other questions? No, so we'll move on to the corporate risk management review. Is this you as well, Tina?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report is an update for risk at Q3, again for October to December 2025, and was reported to Audit Committee on the 25th of February. So all of our corporate risks are scored through a framework using a scoring matrix, which shows the raw risk, which is the risk at its highest level, and the residual risk, which is the current score with controls included. And it measures these against the Council's risk appetite, which is currently moderate. So there are 13 corporate risks that we monitor and take to the Audit Committee. And underneath these sit a large number of related departmental risks, which are monitored and scored throughout the quarter. These departmental scores give an indication of the overall corporate risk level, which we then report to the Audit Committee. Now, by the end of Q3, we're really pleased to have brought to Audit Committee that we had 5 risks that actually decreased. We had no risks that increased in that quarter, and 8 which had stayed the same. So going through the reduced risk, the first one is risk number 1, which is finance, and this has showed a slight decrease. Now, this is mainly due to the government's fair funding review and the long-awaited 3-year settlement figures, which finally gave Gedling some funding certainty over the next 3 financial years. Now, the MTFP, the Medium-Term Financial Plan, still has considerable risk, particularly in the last 2 years, so 29-30 and 30-31, as significant efficiencies will need to be found to balance the budget. However, in the short to the medium term, so up to 2028-29, the budget is balanced without the need for any additional efficiencies. Now, I will say that without the need for any additional efficiencies, this is on the understanding that current identified efficiencies are delivered, and if any of those can no longer be delivered, then we will need to find new efficiencies to replace those. We do have a risk provision in place which does mitigate against immediate in-year risk of slippage and non-delivery, but for any that aren't going to be delivered at all, we will need to replace them. There's also some question over some funding that sits outside of the funding settlement, and assumptions have been made in the MTFP that this funding will continue, but we don't have acknowledgement of that yet, and it's particularly around DEFRA's funding for EPR, which is the Extended Producer's Responsibility. So up to local government reorganisation, we are balanced. The new efficiencies that we talked about that are being needed in those last 2 years are likely to be delivered through economies of scale as part of LGR. So at the moment, I'm not too concerned about that. The revenue budgets are still tight, so the risk does remain high around finance, and it is likely to continue to remain high. Any substantial investments that the council makes will need to be financially sustainable. They'll need to wash their own face, so any investments that we make will need to generate income which covers any borrowing that we might need to take out, and this includes Carlton Active, which we have talked about earlier today. Risk 2, capacity. So this risk actually increased in Q2, mainly to noticeable impacts on capacity within the Environment Department as a result of sickness, both long and short-term sickness, which was also reflected through an increased level of complaints to the service. There have been significant improvements to the management of sickness, with a new revised policy being implemented, and some improvements in capacity in this area, with a significant reduction in complaints. So this has resulted in a slight risk reduction. The risk has reduced, but it's still higher than we would like to see it. However, there are other risks associated with LGR that have started to emerge, as we have seen some staff migrate to other organisations that are likely not affected by LGR. We do need to keep our eye on this, we also have been looking at potentially a separate risk around LGR to include in the corporate risk register, and SRT are currently considering that. So risk number 6, reputation, which is very much linked to capacity, has also seen an improved position, mainly due to waste. There has been a reduction in this risk from 6 to 4, which is now at the moderate level, which is a great result. It is a direct result of significant reduction in the number of complaints seen in waste services, and a 77% reduction in missed bins. Acknowledge that we have still got some work to do, which continues, and all of this has been possible by the implementation and the impact of white space and a cross-council transformation project. Risk number 11, fraud, bribery and misconduct. Now, I'm really happy to say that this risk has also seen a slight reduction to reflect the actions that have been undertaken over the past 12 months, and also the value for money conclusion of our external auditors, which states the serious weakness that they found, which was linked to the fraud that was identified in July 2022, no longer exists in the audit of the 24-25 statement of accounts. In addition, user access for the core financial system has been removed from the finance team to the ICT department, which means that manipulation of the system associated with that fraud cannot happen in the future, and it removes much of that risk. There is still some outstanding actions on the fraud action plan that we need to consider and address, and we will continue to look for ways to further mitigate risks against fraud. There's also been a lot of work undertaken in departments to identify identify departmental fraud risks and to introduce mitigations and controls. This risk still remains high due to the potential impact of any fraud, although we do hope to see it reduce further in 26-27, but we do expect it to remain quite high just because of the nature and the impact of any potential frauds. So risk number 12 is our fifth and final risk to be reduced, and it is all around standards, service standards and performance indicators. So a reduction is very much due to the improved performance per position, which we have talked about, and also again mainly related to waste services as discussed already. There is a reduction in customer complaints, and the risk has reduced from a 6 to a 4, again in the moderate level now. There's been a number of actions completed in Q3, which includes the rollout of the equality, diversity and inclusion training to depot and civic centre staff, and a new corporate legacy plan focusing on priorities over the next 2 years, which has been agreed at Cabinet and Council, and its annual delivery plan, which will go to Cabinet in March for approval. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Tina. This question is probably for commenters for Sarah Tromans. Thank you. I'd just like to say my life seems to be ruled by bins, being a gardener as well as a councillor. My 3 garden bins were missed last Friday. I reported them after 5 o'clock on Friday, and they were emptied by 10 o'clock on Saturday. So I would just like to say thank you for that. Somebody has been very conscientious behind the scenes. But in part of this report, I noticed that there's a communications plan for garden waste for the scheme this year, which was launched or supposed to be launched in February 26. Have I missed this? I haven't received anything about bins yet this year. Am I jumping the gun or have I missed it?
No, so you should have received an email reminder to resubscribe, and we have had a lot of subscriptions that have been completed now on the website. So can you just double check your junk for me? And if it's not gone, I'll check your email address that we've got on the file to make sure that we've got the right details.
No, it'll be the right one.
Well, worth checking.
Okay, yeah, I'll see if it's gone to junk. I wouldn't have missed it, I don't think. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Meads.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tina. You know, with, say, May time or whatever, we find out LGI is definitely happening, will you, put part to one side the medium-term financial plan and all the rest of it? Talking about 2030 and all that sort of stuff. Is that all out the window now?
So I think in terms of the MTFP, because we want to ensure that we go into local government reorganisation as a viable council. So that's why we have continued to forecast for the 5 years. And we've balanced the budget for the first 3 of those years. Once we find out where we're going, well, not even when we find out where we're going, we already have cross working groups with other authorities, with all the Section 151 groups, where we've all been talking about the MTFP, what our forecasts and projections look like, to make sure that we're all forecasting on kind of like a similar basis and we can all bring it together. When we did the initial work with PwC for the bids that have gone in, all of the MTFPs at that point were consolidated and taken together. So it's not out the window. We will continue to work on those, and we will continue to try and find efficiencies wherever we can to help the predecessing authority to manage those. But obviously, when Gedling has gone and we do kind of like merge into a new unitary authority, there will be economies of scale that will be made, which I am hoping or assuming that will address a lot of these efficiencies that need to be made in those last years. What I will say is we're not on our own in that position. Many of the district councils that in Nottinghamshire that I've been talking to are in a very, very similar position where they have a balanced budget for 2-3 years, but it's those last 2 years of the MTFP. Now, when you're forecasting that far in advance, because we only have funding certainty over 3 years, when we forecast funding for those final 2 years, we are very, very prudent because we don't know what it's going to look like. As we get closer to that, if we were to remain, as we get closer to that, those years would be more firmed up, if that makes sense, because we get more funding certainty. So regardless of LGR, those final 2 years of the financial plan are always kind of like a bit more far removed from the forecasting, because it's difficult to forecast with any degree of certainty for 5 years.
Right, okay. And you've set 100 grand aside to sort LGR out or something, haven't you?
We've put a provision in the budget for 2 years for 100,000 for each of the year to help us deal with any pressures that might come regarding LGR. However, we don't know what they are yet, and we just thought it was prudent to put something in so that we've got a marker in the sand.
I would have thought if the city get their way and they split the borough, you're going to have a lot more work to do than if you didn't. You know what I mean? You're going to have to split all the IT off, and there's going to be a massive amount of work. And I just thought 100 grand seems a bit like that was all.
Yeah, I think until we know where we're going, which we're expecting probably July time, and then we'll have a better idea, and then we can have a look again. Right. But as I say, we're not quite sure what that work involves at the moment. We're all involved in quite a lot of working groups with other authorities, which are very much themed in certain areas. So I'm very heavily involved on the finance one. We'll definitely keep our eye on it, and if we need to put any more money in, we'll revisit it.
All right, okay, thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just to carry on the bin point, Sarah, because I think waste collection can impact about 3 of these risks: environmental and reputation and capacity to deliver for delivery. On Coronation Walk, which is, I don't expect you to know the detail, by the way, but on Coronation Walk in my ward, we've missed the bins every week for the past 3 weeks, and I wasn't alerted by white space, which I have previously been. So I just wonder if there's any follow-up that your team do to make sure that process is working, because that was something I was looking forward to getting once we introduced that new service, because then we knew before Facebook or Twitter or anyone else knew, so we could respond effectively. But I don't think that's continued to work. I just wondered if you'd follow up on that to check.
Can you do that after the meeting?
Yeah.
Just conscious of the time, and we're reviewing the Q3 risk management report, but you'll get a response. Okay. Right. Any other questions about this report? No. Emma, Scrutiny Work Programme. And after all the discussion about how we don't have enough working groups, I'm sure you've all come with ideas for working groups.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of an update on the work programme. I want to start off with a few updates of sort of notes arising from the last meeting. Just to confirm that we haven't had an update from the Carlton Town Board Chair yet about coming to the next meeting, but we do have a lot of months, so I'll chase that to make sure that they're at the next meeting if they want to and they're available to come. You might have seen, if you've read the papers thoroughly, that we have some draft dates on the forward plan based on the dates that we've sort of set as sort of provisional dates. So July is the next ONS date, as long as everything gets approved. I also wanted to note that internally we have set up a new system where we're sort of taking action notes from meetings and putting them on an action log, where SLT and ADs can have a look at that, so that questions that get answered at committees can be answered quickly and given to the right person, so that members hopefully do get updates quicker. So that should help hopefully get some responses. Just to confirm on the dates for next year, I've also made sure that we're looking at ONS dates to align better with Cabinet and when performance and risk comes, because I know it's we've had quite a lot of complaints from members, quite rightly, that you always get Q3 and 4 months after, and it seems a bit irrelevant. So we're going to work our best to make sure that you get it as close as possible to Cabinet. Just as a caveat, though, all of the dates are subject to change and before the AGM, but I will be emailing out members once officers have agreed that they're okay. And then I wanted a bit of feedback, actually. Now we've had our first portfolio holder under the different sort of regime. I know that Councillor Pope mentioned that we got the slides a little bit later than we wanted to, but did that help in terms of sort of allowing you to read them, to formulate questions, the timeline? I'm seeing quite a lot of nods, so hopefully we can go forward with this process, get them when we send the agendas out in future, just because we want you to be able to get the information but not be bogged down with the detail at the meeting and not have the time to think about questions. So that's good. I did also want to point out that we only received two feedback emails from members to ask about questions to ask to inform the slides. So just a bit of a plea that please email us to ask what you want so that we can make sure that the slides are really relevant and that they are what you want to hear, so that it's not just talking. You will be maybe excited, maybe stressed to know that the next portfolio holder is Councillor Wheeler. So his area is obviously covers leisure, so that may be a good for you, bad for him maybe. We are confirming with him that he's available for that meeting, but that will be in July. And then also, again, just some feedback that we'd like for July. We haven't got any partners on there to confirm. So on the report, we've had some suggestions from the members. I wanted to get a thought on where you want to go for the July meeting. Just to confirm, the people that you suggested are Calverton Corps, enforcement agents, Friends of Bestwood Country Park, Friends of Breck Hill, Friends of Gedling Country Park, Hope Nottingham, Nottinghamshire County Council and Rural Community Action Nottingham, Arcan. So can I have views on the next meeting? My suggestion would probably be things that align well with leisure, to sort of have a leisure type meeting in July, but we're obviously at your will. So any thoughts on who you'd like for July, so we can ask them in good time?
I'd quite like the Friends of Gedling Country Park. It'd be interesting to hear, because we haven't yet heard about the impact of the parking charges, whether it's had any impact on.
Members happy with that, if we reach out to them? Yeah, perfect. And then also, yeah, as Councillor Pope mentioned, any suggestions for working groups, please let me know. You can email me if you haven't got ideas now, but we have until July, so use these few months to formulate some great ideas, and we will do chasing in the meantime. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Pope.
Right, thank you. Is that better? Yeah, I'll talk quietly now. Given it's come up both at council last week and tonight again, I'd like to suggest a working group looking at the councillor pots and how those monies are utilised.
I think that's subject to consultation, so let me go back and speak to SLT on that, and then I will get an email answer out to you.
Could we use the vehicle of seeing it before it goes to Cabinet that we did with one of the other reports?
I can ask, yes.
Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you. I was one of the people that sent in my questions before for the things I just want to take credit for. Thank you very much. And it was about local government reorganisation was one of my questions. And then I just thought it was an opportunity to ask this almost of the wider committee, is that obviously we know that July-ish we might know more about local government organisation. It does feel like we should have, I'm not necessarily saying it's a working group, but at least almost like a standing agenda item moving forward from the summer that actually talks about local government reorganisation, because this is going to be the biggest thing, and for a while, to the end, it will be the only thing that basically we talk about as a council for a while. And it just feels like it makes sense to have that come here. I'm interested, I'm going to turn around and look at Councillor Smith, because obviously with his input from the County Council was, I suppose what we want to do is make sure that we are being consistent with the council. So it's, I don't mind what vehicle that ends up coming here and who it is, but I feel like it would make sense that becomes like a standing item basically moving forward.
I'm sure we'll still talk about bins though. Councillor Meads.
Oh, I agree with David. But yeah, what I was going to say was, this is the second scrutiny meeting I've been to, and the first one was just like a PR thing, and apart from bins, nobody brings, the portfolio does, they never bring up anything that's going wrong, they just sort of selling how wonderful they are. And the last one I went to was Parks and Street Care, and I think they're underperforming. I don't want to say what I think, but I think they're underperforming in practically every aspect. And all we got was a rosy sales thing, how fantastic they are, and all the staff were thanked and everything. And I didn't think then there's no real scrutiny here. So it'd be interesting to know if somebody came up here and said, yeah, and we're having problems with this, we're having problems with that, we're not very good at this, and then we say, why aren't you, and blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, just everybody saying, it's wonderful, it's fantastic, oh yeah, thanks for your report, it's not real scrutiny.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? Just to say that we did change this slightly for this meeting. So Councillor Pearson's update had a clear section, 2 sections on what they can do better and risks. So that is something that I have stressed to portfolio holders. If members felt that it wasn't a big enough section, then we can ask them to elaborate.
I just thought that was their personality, that was all.
No. So we have asked that every portfolio holder now comes and give more of a strategic review of their service, of their area, what their risks are, what their challenges are, and that was reflected today. If it wasn't discussed enough, then we can put a highlight on making that more key, because the members in overview and scrutiny, your job is to scrutinise, but there needs to be a balance of performance and risks. So, but I'll take that on board and.
I just don't feel there's this real scrutiny. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think what I hear, the last meeting I went to, I don't think it's relatable to what actually happens in those departments.
So thank you.
Yeah,
I think the concerns you've raised have been raised by the committee, and certainly this was the first time that what we've tried to put in place, and I think having the call in as well at this meeting probably curtailed that. But if you've got any further suggestions, because you're right, no, this committee does not want to just sit and watch lots of slides with being read out. We want to be able to scrutinise what the portfolio holders are doing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I have not been notified of any other business, so the meeting is now closed. Thank you all very much.